Hello class, we are in week 11. We are moving along and we're coming up to one of the most important wars in U.S. history that, as I say in my lectures, most of you will have not heard of some or have no understanding of. And it's a little bit almost bizarre when you consider the issue of the proximity of Mexico to America, to the United States of America, to clarify, and the topics of the debate about illegal immigration and the wall and all this stuff, and then yet this very important war, very little understanding about it and the implications of the war, and what we'll see later is how this also puts pressure on the United States to have its own civil war over the unresolved issue of slavery. So I really want to encourage you to soak in this week's lectures. And the documentary, I'm so glad it's still up. I'm always so worried. I get so many good documentaries that I watch, and then they get removed, and I just really think this does a great job of kind of articulating all perspectives, from the Mexican perspective to the U.S. perspective on the Mexican-American War. So anyways, I hope that you enjoy this, but also see the importance of understanding it. And so I've already kind of even mentioned that even in the lectures. I don't want to go overboard. And then I also want to kind of address something about, a post I did about, one of my last announcements was on Hitler and inspiration by playing cowboys and Indians, or if you actually took the time to look at that announcement, that Hitler was inspired by how we treated the natives. In other words, the white dominance in the United States. He actually said North America, and I'm actually sure he's implying also Canada, that he saw that as fundamentally an inspiration, and the popularity of cowboy and Indian novels in Germany and Austria at the time. Sometimes people get a little offended or uncomfortable about, when a professor hits it feels that I'm being anti-American, when in fact I'm simply stating something that we can't debate. Hitler was inspired how he did ethnic cleansing on the indigenous population here. That's just a fact, okay? And I kind of want you to understand that. Like, that's not just me having some sort of agenda, but I want us to take it into perspective, especially since we are seeing something happening now. And I realize there is a different points of view on what's currently going on in North Dakota. But I just feel, as a professor who does love my country and loves to teach U.S. history, and when I have my students say, "Thank God things are in the past," when I see that they're not resolved and something's going on currently, I feel like I have a moral obligation to kind of throw out what I want to say on it. And so I hope you understand it in that context. I really do not want to just try to make you guys feel like I'm bombarding you with my own politics in this class. And some of you may already feel a little bit of that. But, I mean, it's hard, right? Because ultimately, as a historian, you pick and choose an understanding of things, and then you make your statements in your presentation. But I think it's important. I think that we need to realize things like the fact that our treatment of native populations, there's no way to get around it. We made our life here a reality at the expense of somebody else, and there's nothing you can do about that fact. What's interesting, I'm going to out myself right now. I do not live in Modesto, California at this moment. I'm living in Portland, Oregon, and I taught at MJC. And because I teach online, I live up here in the Northwest. And I'm glad that MJC lets me do that. And I try to make myself as accessible to you guys as possible in light of the fact that we can't be in person. So, I'm in any case, I moved up here and I met many, many, many American Indians. By the way, most of them like to be called American Indians or Indians as opposed to Native American. I use that term because that's what I've been, that's the term that I've been used to using, but they don't find that offensive. It's just that they still call themselves American Indian. There are many reservations and a relatively strong presence of tribal groups here that are still affiliated with their native tribes and speak their language. And I've been up to Canada a few times, and you really see the presence there. I mean, if you go up north, you actually have signs that are bilingual, some in English and then others in the native language. And the tribes have signs saying, "Welcome to our territory," which, in terms of political power, I'm not sure what that means. I guess what I'm saying is that it really hit me living up here, the presence of Native Americans, because like in California where I grew up, even though there are tribes and people living in parts of California, I just never was exposed to that perspective that much. And I worked with a woman who is still a part of her tribe, and it really got me to think. I mean, there was one girl that there's a woman that adopted this one girl that my daughter used to stay the night over, and they're both Native Americans, American Indians, and she's from a tribe in California, in a part of California that I've never been to, way up on the north, almost on the border with Oregon. And she said that her tribe never even had recorded seeing a white person until like 1850. And so this is all very new, right? We forget. It's crazy how new our conquest of the entire continent really is. That we're like, time moves so fast, and our presence here, we have to kind of like soak in. We may have time for me to show you a documentary on the Modoc War, which I watched here on a Oregon broadcast, and it's where we weeded out Native families right after the Civil War in this part, and this kind of memory is very alive and well for the natives here, and again, this is not something that I thought about even though I've been teaching history and I've articulated this through lectures. Living here really kind of put it into living reality, and I don't know, I think it's just worth pondering sometimes, especially as we see what's going on in North Dakota. I don't know, it's just made me think about a lot of things, and again, you have a right to any opinion you have, and I hope you always know, as my students, I always want you to know that I grade fair, and I appreciate my students regardless of your political thoughts, and I'll leave it at that. So here we are, we're going into this week's lesson, and as always, please feel free to contact me and go over anything that we need to together, and enjoy that extra hour of sleep for daylight savings. Okay.